The Redondo Beach Center for Spiritual Living and the Ministry of Dr. Moira Foxe presents Living Ideas.
And so on this good day, we have a wonderful thing to look at and think about and decide about and be renewed as a result of. And it's the life process of course, always. As you know, we've been kind of thinking about the flow of life and how we're all in the flow of life. And more than in the flow of it, we are the flow of it. And it behooves us to understand how that all works. So within that framework, we're looking at life and rebirth. Life and rebirth. And it was the great Lao Tzu himself who said a long time ago that if any of us could ever come into the understanding and the awareness of the flow of life, then he says we would have solved the great enigma of existence. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm still solving at the solving level. But, you know, it gets a little bit more exciting and it gets a little bit cooler and easier and more graceful as I'm open and receptive to learning and understanding more deeply and fully this thing called life. But you and I are never going to understand what the flow of life is all about unless we see it in its cycle. And the cycle is life, death, and rebirth. Oh yes, I said the D word, death. And it's not, it's not something that we all decide to think about and say, oh goody, I get to think about death today. That's a lovely thing to be thinking about and filling my mind with. Well, in truth, it is actually, because it's not what any of us think it to be, the morbidity around it that we have imbibed from all kinds of thinking out there. It's not that at all. It's just part of the creative process. It's part of the cycle of life. And the more that we can understand it and see it as this dynamic thing that it is, the easier it is when that point in our time comes. Because, you know, we just don't arrive out of the cosmos, out of this wholeness of being, to spend a few very short little years here and then be swept up in oblivion. That's not what life is by means of you or by means of me. There is an innate understanding and feeling and recollection within us and recall that we are part of something very eternally essential to life and living, that each one of us is an essential element in the whole program of life, in the whole cosmos, and that if the element that is you and the element that is not me were not in that cosmos, it couldn't be what it is, and it would collapse in on itself, and it wouldn't be whole without you, the essential element in it. Now that's a phenomenal thing to understand and to think about, ponder, that I am life's eternal livingness. I am life's continuum. That's what I am. And so that this thing called death is not a blind alley, you know. It's not a dead-end street. And it doesn't matter if they lay my body aside when I leave it. That doesn't mean that that's the end of me by any manner or means. No, death is not a blind alley. It's a major thoroughfare. It's a very busy place. If you could think of death like a great tunnel that you come to, and you're going to pass through that great tunnel and go into a much more wonderful, amazing, incredible place that you haven't been to before. And it doesn't matter how lovely the place that you've left before you went into the tunnel is, the place you're coming out into is even better. It's more awesome. It's more awesome. And if you could see it like that, so it's this thoroughfare of comings and goings. And, you know, it's a thoroughfare, it's a tunnel that closes at dusk and opens again at dawn. Ready for business. And if you could approach that point in time called death as that thoroughfare, as that tunnel of change and transformation, It would be so easier to move into it and with excitement flow through it out into our expanded new experience of what it is to be a continuum in life and in living. I mean, it's like the seed that gets into the garden and it just grows and blossoms into this beautiful, gorgeous flower, and it spreads its sweetness and its essence and delight all over the place until the ripeness of time for it to go into the withering syndrome, which doesn't sound all that exciting, but in the flower knows that that's just the next stage so that it can become more of itself, because if it doesn't go into the withering syndrome, it cannot produce all those bazillions of seeds that have come out of that one seed that went into the ground. And so therefore it couldn't experience itself in this expanded way, in this amazing multiplication of its dynamic energy. And that's the way it is with us, you see, when we put aside the body. It's just to realize the more of the self and to continue on in our eternal life. Because you and I are living our eternal life right here and right now. It doesn't happen in the sweet by and by. Doesn't happen in the sweet by and by. It's happening right now. This is my eternal life. This is your eternal life. And it'll just keep expanding and becoming more of itself with each tunnel experience. It was Schopenhauer, one of the great minds in the world, who said that most of us live our lives in the delusion that we come out of nothing and that we're here for a few years and that's the end of it, or that we're, that this is our first ever experience of what it is of life, what it is to be alive, that this is the first time we came into being. And he said that's, of course, all nonsense. And he would, because he was an incarnationalist. And he believed in, life ongoing and more experiences and expressions of life. I get what he's saying. I'm not an incarnationalist myself. I believe that, yes, you can come back if you want to come back. And certainly it's worthwhile coming back for the chocolate. So if you want to come back, you can come back. But I believe you can go to other great places too. So I'd be more of an immortalist rather than an incarnationalist, because I want to go to a place and a state where we don't have to kill anything to eat or to live or all that kind of stuff. So, that's just me and what I would like. But he says, what happened was in the first 3 centuries of Christianity, we believed in reincarnation. We absolutely did. It wasn't a problem. Most world religions believed in it. Christianity believed in it too. And then along came the Desert Fathers and they decided, well, I don't know that this is all that very good for us to be believing or to be teaching to the people, because it needs to go, because the idea and the concept of reincarnation kind of does away with our efficacy as intermediates between man and God, and so it kind of diminishes our role and diminishes our job. Let's let that go. Let's wipe that off the face of the planet and proceed in the way that it did proceed. And it's a man-made construct, as most things of that nature are, that are introduced as a religious dogma or doctrine and so on. And so from there on in, of course, it was dropped from the whole idea of Christianity. But there is an innate thing in us that tells us, that reassures us, I'm more than this. I'm more than this little life I'm living. I'm more than this painful life I'm living. I'm more than this disappointing life I'm living. I'm even more than this great good life that I'm living. There's an innate knowing within us that keeps nudging us to wake up and remember that. And it's true. It's, it's like Browning says, I love Browning, the poet. He says, that life on earth, he says, is the experience of the broken arc, but life in the heavens is the experience of the perfect round. And he's not talking about places, he's talking about states of mind and states of consciousness. So the human consciousness that we keep identifying with will produce the broken arc, whereas the super consciousness that we can experience and be in will express the complete and round whole. So death is simply part of the whole experience of life. It's the other side of this life. That's all it is, and not to be feared. And certainly we could get rid of all of our morbidity around it, because there's a lot of morbidity around it, so we need to let that go. And I also agree, I love when Victor Hugo said, he said, when I go down into the grave, I can say, my day's work is finished, but I cannot say, my life is finished. Tomorrow morning, my life will begin again. And I just love that's that easy, comfortable, awareness that he managed to glean for himself before his transition, before his ongoingness. Now, Shakespeare, God bless Willie, he has something to say about everything. Everything. There's not anything he hasn't said something about. So, Shakespeare says that all the world's a stage and all its men and women merely players, each playing a different part. And as you know, that's very true. It's a wonderful, metaphor for what we do. But if it is indeed a stage, it's one upon which we play many, many different roles, wear many, many different costumes, and change the script a lot. However, the one constant in all of that, the stage may change, the costumes will change, the play will change, but the actor remains the one constant in it all. However, there is a danger that the actor might over-identify with any one given role and be so identified with it that actor loses a sense of reality and becomes the character that the actor has been playing. Because maybe the actor has been excellent at this part, and has achieved such a great state of acclaim and so on. As a consequence of it, they move into it, they settle down in it, and then they say, well, this is me. And this is not a good thing to do, because it's a very narrow, limited way to live, to be over-identified with a role, when I am so much more than that. You see, those of us who are blessed to know that we are spiritual beings and not limited by a body or in time or in space are not so inclined to over-identify with any one particular role and get caught up in it, because then we become typecast. I mean, Boris Karloff, which is an old black and white movie actor, it's not my time. No, I didn't know that was my mother's time. But, classic TV will show all these old shows again, and you can see what was going on. But it is said of Boris Karloff that because he played the very fine part of, and very well, Frankenstein, that the casting people in Hollywood, kept identifying him with monster roles, and it thwarted his career as an actor. Well, we can thwart our own life's experience when we typecast ourselves in all kinds of ways, when we typecast ourselves as a failure, as that which is limited and cannot achieve our desired goals, when we typecast ourselves with statements like, well, that's just how I am, and that's my life, and I suppose I better just simply accept it, and so forth. These are all nonsenses that we tell ourselves, and it's a typecasting of ourselves, and it's a limiting of ourselves, and it's keeping us stuck and blocked and out of the flow of life. We kind of bank ourselves on that river. We're banked. We're out of the flow of life's river. And we typecast ourselves too as we go along the river of life and get caught up with that stone there. That's very interesting. And we get stuck there around that stone for a while, or that bit of a bush growing out of the side there. That's very interesting. And we get snagged by that, and so on. Instead of staying in the flow, staying in the center, and delighting in everything that's passing us by and saying, isn't that interesting? But to keep going, because the river is taking you out into the great, beautiful, wonderful, adventuresome ocean. And you want to make it to the ocean with as much grace and ease as you can. And that's where we're all going. And of course, the great ocean is the cosmos of life itself and living. And the river of life is our experience of life as we're living it right here and right now. And whatever that is, it can be changed by you if You want to change it. And the way you change it is by understanding that I'm not just me. I'm not just my thinking. I'm not just my feeling. I'm not just my experiences. I'm not just where I find myself. I am so much more than that. I am that spiritual being that's capable of dynamic expansion, expansion, expansion. And that because of the great cosmos that lives, moves, and has its being within me, the wholeness of being, that is, if I align myself with it and come into cooperation with it, I am unstoppable, and there's no good I cannot achieve or experience or express. But I have to be in cooperation with the flow of life. I have to understand how it works. And I have to say yes to it, respond to it. I have to allow myself to be the outlet to its inlet. The outlet to its, instead of sitting on it and blocking it up and damming it up. I have to be part of that cosmic flow, the flow of life itself, and understand that when I'm identifying myself, I need to identify myself with the truth, not with the delusion or illusion or the lack or the limited circumstances I might find myself in, because those are just facts, and facts always change facts. The truth never does, but the facts do change. So I have to get a sense of myself as that which is continuous, eternal, and deathless. Nothing can destroy this life that I am. Even if I myself try to destroy it and make every endeavor to do that, it's impossible. I cannot, because this life is not my own. No, it is the life of the one who created me. It is the life of the one who breathes me. It's the life of the one who lives through me. It's the life of the one who chose to express itself by means of me. So it cannot be destroyed. It is almighty, it is eternal, it is continuous and ongoing, and its nature is forward movement and expansion. And so what thwarts us in our life and living is lack of expansion, lack of movement, lack of that dynamic energy having its way with us by expressing itself through us. And it's given to you and it's given to me to be the fullness of it, the ripeness of it, the richness of it, the essence of it. And what is its essence? It's omni. It's omni-essence. Omni-essence. What is omni-essence? Omni-essence is omnipotence, all power, omniscience, all known, and almighty, eternal omnipresence. So you, in your element, you are, in your element of the cosmos, you are omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent. You are everywhere present, just like your Creator. God help us all. Everywhere present. I have to bump into you everywhere I go, and you have to bump into me everywhere you go. Because we're all mirrors for each other. Every person, place, and thing is a mirror into which we look. Like it, lump it, love it. That's the way it is. A mirror. I'm looking into it. And I have to face myself down every time I look into that mirror. Or ignore it and pretend it's not there. And it's not true anyway. Because I am no way like her or him over there. Maybe them over there, but those over there, they've nothing got to do with me. Nothing at all. Wrong. Wrong. I am everything and everyone, and everything and everyone is me. Well, now go figure that one out, and I tell you, you'll leave the body straight away, because you can't be with us. You'll be so brilliant. You'll be so brilliant. You couldn't stay here. You'd be like, oh, not going up in a fiery whatever. But that's what's given to us to break through its conundrum, to figure it out. That's the puzzle. That's the labyrinth we're in. That's the labyrinth we're in. And we can get to the center of it, and we can get to understanding it. We wouldn't be given that task if we couldn't. And so it's given to you and it's given to me this week to take a look at the life that we're living, to ask ourselves, my goodness me, what is the worth of a day to me? Because understand this, life can only be lived in a day. It cannot be lived in any other way except in a day, in a moment in each day. We're living our life day by day, that's all. Day by day. It's a day-by-day process. So what is any day worth to you? What is the value of any day in your life is what we ask ourselves this week, and maybe for the rest of our days. What is the value of a day to you? And if you understood its value, how would you live it? And as I was saying this morning, if we could just choose for one day to live a day as though it was the very last day we were going to spend on this holiday place called planet Earth before we were out of here and going on to a greater experience, how would that day be? How would we use it? How would we value it? What would its worth be to us? I can tell you this much. None of our focus would be on stuff and things. None of it. Not one moment would we give to stuff and things. We would not pay any attention to stuff and things. What would happen would be we would become the best of ourselves. We would be the most caring, the most generous, the most kind, the most understanding, the most welcoming, the most forgiving, the most all of what is good. That's what we would become in that day. We would start to live as the truth of ourselves. We would start to live from the highest point of view in life and living. We would be all that we could be and are here to be for that one day. So the challenge this week is for you and for me to take any day this week, choose any day, and decide that you're going to live that day like it was your last day, and see how you get on, and see the difference it's going to make in your own life and in the lives of everybody else around you, just for one day. Now, if you can pull that one off, which will be a huge accomplishment, maybe you'll choose to live another day like that next week, one day. And if you succeed there, maybe the next week you'll do it for one day, and eventually maybe you'll do it for 2 days a week. You get where I'm going with that. And see how life is from that perspective, the perspective of this open receptivity to the blessings of life, but more than that, to the open receptivity of being the blessing in life. And I'm telling you, you will sleep like a baby the night you succeed in pulling that one off. And there's no better symbology for death than the symbology of day and night. I mean, at night we retire, we go into our beds, we sleep, we refresh, we wake up the next morning having laid the cares of the world aside while we slumber. And at the dawn, we rise up into the promise of a new day. It's a beautiful analogy for what death is. You know, it's a resting, it's a going down and resting, and it's a coming up again. A going down, a resting, and a coming up again. A going down, a resting, and a coming up. And life, death, and rebirth. Life, death, and rebirth. You have died to so many things in your life you're not even aware of. I mean, you can come out of a relationship that's finished and you can say, now my life is over. Or you can come out of a relationship and say, now my life is beginning again. It's perspective. It's perspective. It's all. I can leave a room and say, I'm leaving. Or I can leave a room and say, I'm entering. It's perspective. It's how you see things, how you look at things. Are you looking through doom and gloom, or are you looking to bright sunshine and liberation? You know, and it is the way you perceive it, because your life is exactly the way you see your life being. Your world is exactly not as it is out there, it is as you are. The world out there is exactly as you are in here. And that's perspective. So you can choose a different perspective, a different role to play anytime you desire. The choice is yours. The promise of every new day awaits you, always the promise of every new day, and every new day is a promise of some great good that could emerge through your life, to your life. It's up to you. Through the way you're thinking, through the way you're feeling, through the way you're open, through the way you're receptive, to that promise being fulfilled by means of you. So again, we come back to choose this day the blessing or the curse. And it's not that we do it consciously, but I am saying consciously now, choose the blessing. If you're conscious, you're not going to choose the curse. So choose the blessing and you will be the blessing in the day. Choose the curse and you are the curse in the day, let me tell you. There's nobody getting in your way or my way except me. There's no bogeyman in my life except me, the one I produce. You know, that's just how it is. So if it's going to be, yes indeed, the old cliche in metaphysics, if it's going to be, it's up to me. If it's going to be, it'll happen through me. If it's going to be, I'm the one that makes it happen. Nobody else. And I'm not going to make it happen until I'm in touch with that which is greater than my little ego self. Because my ego is going to keep me very firmly in place in a small little box, very narrowly confined, really irritated, really cranky, really crabby, and really at loggerheads with the world. But if I understand that I have the way and the means within me to appease my ego, to soothe my ego, to heal my ego, to balance out my ego, I can live a beautiful, wonderful, rich life. It's given to you, it's given to me. It's up to you, it's up to me. So this week, we are all invited to choose this day, the blessing, and live one day as though it were indeed our last day on this plane, and see if the gates of heaven will not open and pour its blessings out upon us to the extent that we will not be able to hold all that's given to us. That's ahead of you if you choose it. And I'm knowing that we are all going to choose it, and so it is.